Welcome back, everybody, to the Endless Party.
Welcome, welcome.
I don't know why, but I feel like it's been ages since we've done this.
It's been so long since we have gotten to talk to you guys.
Yeah.
And we are happy to be here.
It's only 1 week for you, but it feels like decades.
Man, just been too long.
Yeah. So let's jump right in. We are talking about a book by one of our favorite authors, Mr. Norman Vincent Peale. It's called The Tough-Minded Optimist. You might know Mr. Peale from The Power of Positive Thinking. We've discussed it on this podcast before. But this one is also a banger.
This is a great book.
It's a great book.
So, before I gave birth to the twins, we had The Power of Positive Thinking just on our bookshelf for a couple months. Elijah bought it, but we were
ages.
immersed in other books, so we didn't read it. Anyways, I read it before the babies, and I came to love it so much that Elijah surprised me after the babies were born with
Take
a
notes,
little
gentlemen.
postpartum gift. And in this gift, he bought me 3 of his other books.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just barely got to finishing The Tough-Minded Optimist, and it is for sure a great book.
It's
too.
really good.
Anyways, so we're excited to share some of our favorite chapters from this book with you guys.
Yeah, we just want to go through the principles with it and some of our own insights, obviously, because it's our podcast.
Of course.
And so let's dive in. It says one of the principles is have what it takes to take it. And so what does that mean? It means life is hard. Life beats you down. And in the words of Rocky Balboa, it says, what does he say? Sorry, now I lost my train of thought. Getting a little giddy. So he says, I think it's life will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. It's about how much you can take and keep moving forward. Then he says, that's how winning is done. Okay.
Getting stronger.
Anyways, so.
To live in this world, you just have to be strong.
Yeah.
Or else.
Or else you're a weakling and you will get squished like a bug.
So what do we need to do? We need to start developing inner toughness and strength of mind and spirit.
You got to develop your mind and your spirit. It's one thing to develop your body. That's good too. But you got to develop your mind and your soul.
Well, how do you do this? Well, one of the ways you can is you can recognize that God built us with potential strength. And this is just part of our nature. And you can affirm this to yourself daily.
Yeah. Think about this for a second. We are all created in the image and likeness of God. Do you really think God is a weakling and some pathetic pushover?
Of course not.
No. Okay? So, in all reality, that means you are very strong. You are very independent. You are very driven. You are disciplined. All those characteristics and attributes are built within you. So go out and start taking what it is that's yours.
Absolutely. Another one of Norman Vincent Peale's suggestions is, this is a word, I think he made it up, but anyways, he says, become a possibilitarian. And this means that no matter how dark things may get, you can raise your sights and see the possibilities. And you can always see them, for they're always there. And I think that actually is an attribute of a very strong person. It's that they refuse to remain in the situation they're in and look towards the light and look for life's possibilities, and then they jump at them.
Yeah, they look for the opportunities, and guess what? They always find them. You know, through my 28 years of life, I've found that 2 people can accomplish anything, so long as one of those 2 people is God. And that's what Mr. Peale talks about, is that you can accomplish anything so long as God is your partner. And he has made emphasis to this in multiple books, not just The Tough-Minded Optimist. In The Power of Positive Thinking, he refers to it in business, and he says, make God your business partner. But I would take it a step further and say, make God your life partner. You can and will accomplish anything so long as God is your partner. And so how can you be tough-minded? Make God your partner.
Yes. Another thing that Elijah and I firmly believe in is that what you think you will become ultimately. For good or for bad, for weak or for strong, defeated or victorious. It's all up to you and the thoughts that you choose to foster every day.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about that with our own racing. Is whenever we thought that it was too hot, as Meg put it, in Arizona, or it was too, like, the people were too fast, 9 times out of 10 we lost the race and didn't perform well. But when we thought that we were going to be victorious, when we thought we were going to run incredibly fast, we did 9 times out of 10. And it's the same with our own individual lives. If you think you are a weakling who gets pushed over, you are a weakling who gets pushed over. But on the flip side, you can also believe that you are a very confident individual who takes charge of any given situation, and that's exactly what's going to happen.
Right.
And so you need to think positively of yourself.
Yes. We believe this so firmly that, as we reflect back on our athletic careers and just things in our life, as we are looking for ways to help B and Winnie attain the best in this life, what we really want to teach them is to master their thoughts. Mm-hmm. And we believe that if we can really help them to attain the proper mentality in their, if they choose to pursue athletics, then we think they can be stellar athletes. And I think it just goes to show what we truly have come to realize and recognize and wish we had implemented into our lives sooner.
Right. It's actually interesting, as Meg spoke, we've often talked, man, like, I wish I could go back with the knowledge that I have now into my athletic career, because we did all the right things when it came to training physically, but we didn't minimal work when it came to training mentally. And I think that's where so many people have the edge. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I look at just the previous Olympics very recently, the Olympians and the Olympic champions, they all are training the same amount of time. They're all putting in the work, the mileage, the speed drills, the intensity, all of that's there. But what separates the 1/100th of a second is mentality, because they trained themselves mentally to be able to handle it, and they visualized themselves winning. And so that's exactly what Meg's referenced is, we want to make sure that we train our daughters, obviously, in whatever sport they decide to pursue, but more so than anything is to train their mind.
I want them to be so mentally strong.
Yeah.
Because,
just like Vincent Peale.
Yes, and I think the reason why too is I'm like, okay, I think as a child or our kids in high school, if we can teach them to be strong mentally, within their sport, then everyone has to hang up the spikes eventually, and when that day comes, they can then take that mental toughness and apply it to different areas of their life.
Exactly. Like, you're able to apply this into every area of your life, mm-hmm. which is so incredible, because eventually the physical will wear away, but the mental will remain forever.
Right. The next principle that Norman Vincent Peale explains is never be afraid of anyone or anything. And I'm actually going to read a little portion of some of the things he said.
Pay attention to this, because it's actually really good.
He says it way better than I did. Okay, first he quotes Ella Wheeler Wilcox. And she explains, man is what he thinks, not what he says, reads, or hears. By persistent thinking, you can undo any condition which exists. You can free yourself from any chains, whether of poverty, sin, ill health, unhappiness, or fear. And then Peale goes on to say, there is only one thought pattern that is stronger than fear. Only one that is definitely stronger than fear, and that is faith. And this does not mean faith in general, but faith in particular. It is faith in God, real and humble faith in God, your Father.
It's very, very powerful. I actually really like what Ella Wheeler Wilcox said, is man is not what he writes or what he says, but what he thinks. And that is so true. Me and Meg were actually just talking about this the other day. So many people have read the same books that we have read, but not a single one of them have implemented the principles within the books, because they read the book, but they don't think for themselves, and they don't take that action, right? I mean, one of the most successful selling self-help books out there is Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So many people have read it. I have really good friends that have told me, like, oh, that book is basically my Bible. Mm-hmm. And yet they don't even live by the
And
principles.
then we're like confused.
Because I'm like, wait a minute, no, like you don't even do this. Like, so that doesn't make sense. And it comes down to what Ella Wheeler Wilcox just said. It's because man is what he thinks, not what he reads or what he says. It's our thoughts that determine who we are ultimately.
Which is why you can choose to eliminate thoughts of fear with faith.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so powerful.
I think it's pretty cool too, because if we kind of connect the two books, like The Power of Positive Thinking with The Tough-Minded Optimist, these scriptures, these phrases that we can repeat to ourselves constantly, that's what allows us to become those individuals. So for example, if we are constantly thinking scriptures like, I can do all things through Christ who strengtheneth me, that's no longer just something you have read. That's something that is committed to memory that you say to yourself constantly. And ultimately, that is what you will become. You will believe and become this idea that you can accomplish anything so long as you have Christ by your side.
Yes.
And I think that's so powerful. It's like, yes, actually read and write and speak, but make sure those things are becoming your thoughts. And in so doing, that's who you will become.
So, I have a story to share.
This is a cool story.
So, Abraham Lincoln, we know he was assassinated, right? But as people were going through his personal items, they found his copy of the Bible. And they were thumbing through the pages, and they found that there was one verse in particular where there was smudgy ink, where it was just so obvious that that is where his index finger rested and, constantly was reading. And it was Psalm 34, and it says, I sought the Lord, and he heard me, and he delivered me from all my fears. And I think that's just such a beautiful example of someone who, chose to implement faith and chose to trust that Christ could come and take away his fears. Mind you, this man was president in time of great turmoil, where he was
Incredible
working on
turmoil.
emancipating, the slaves in our country and helping us to, get out of that civil war and all of that contention. And he was the head.
Right.
It was on him.
Yeah.
But he turned to his Bible and he turned to Christ, and he delivered Lincoln from his fears, and he believed it. And I think it's so beautiful.
Well, what's cool is Lincoln is a prime example of a man who ultimately became what he thought.
Yes.
And what's incredible is that he used the scriptures to become that man. He used the Bible. He used resources that allowed him to be known as Honest Abe. And I think that's incredible. There's actually one of my favorite phrases is don't fear, just live right. And I think Abraham Lincoln embodied that more than any person next to Jesus Christ that has ever walked the earth. He had no fear because he lived right. I mean, if you become somebody known as Honest Abe, I feel like you live right.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, that's what it takes. If you just live right, if you do the things that you know you should be doing, like reading your scriptures, like saying your prayers, like being honest, you don't have to fear because God is ultimately on your side. And I think that's incredible because he's an example of somebody who did that.
And who had every reason to be terrified.
Yes. I think the President of the United States should be like the most terrified ever, especially in his time.
Right.
So it's incredible. So don't fear, just live right.
I really like that quote. The next thing that the tough-minded optimist has within their character is the ability to handle situations and themselves. And this is something that I have actually been really, really working on, is learning how to analyze situations and reflecting how I acted, whether I act wise or unwise.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's been really helpful for me because, the reality of life is that we're going to work with difficult individuals and we're going to put in hot and sticky situations.
Right.
But I love the idea that you can always have control of yourself and you can handle yourself very wisely. Elijah's going to share a really cool story.
So I'm actually going to share 2 brief stories. So the first one is I was with an individual, and this individual is in both the stories. So for the first experience, this person got a rise out of me immediately. Just started to accuse me of things that weren't flat out weren't true. But ultimately, I let this get to me, and I freaked out on this individual, and I lost my temper, I lost my cool, I lost control of myself and my emotions. And I vowed, I was like, I'm never going to allow this to happen again. Not with this person or anybody else. Interestingly enough, a little while later, this same person tried to get a rise out of me again, accusing me of things that just blatantly weren't true. And I remember I was able to recall the experience before, luckily. And I just calmly approached this situation, and I was like, actually, that's not true. And I remained calm, collected, and completely in control of myself and my emotions. And because of that, this person all of a sudden just de-escalated. They calmed down. They actually apologized. And so it was just fascinating to me to be able to look back at when I was just losing my cool and losing my temper and losing myself, and be able to recall that. That is what actually gave me the ability to be like, no, I'm not going to be unwise again in this situation, and allow this individual to control myself and my emotions. And because of that, I was able to finally just fully control myself and ultimately take charge of the situation entirely. And I can tell you, it was so freeing to be able to be like, no, like, I'm in charge of how I feel. This person is not in charge of how I feel.
Yeah. One of the ways that we can handle ourselves is, and kind of what I think the individual you're working with in these stories is, you have to ask yourself this question: am I enjoying misery?
Right.
And you need to be able to cast off like self-pity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like a really common flaw in just human nature, is that there's a little part of us that like kind of likes being miserable.
Yes.
I don't know why. It's so dumb.
Weird, right?
It's so dumb.
So odd.
And so I've tried to like look at that within, recognize that within myself and be in a situation. I'm like, am I just like enjoying being mad right now? And if the answer is yes, then I'm like, freak, well, I need to like just cast off this self-pity and move on.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's that old saying that misery loves company.
Yes.
And it's so true. This individual that I was speaking about,
everybody
they were
mad.
miserable, and because of that, they tried to make me miserable with them. But because I was able to handle the situation and de-escalate it, all of a sudden this person then apologized for how they were acting. And then I was able to get to the heart of the real issue. It wasn't me at all. Right? And I think that's what's so fascinating, is what Meg was making reference to, is for some reason some of us like to be miserable. There's that...
We all do. I don't know why.
That one song, I don't even know who it's by, but it's like, sometimes I don't want to be happy.
Don't hold it against me.
Yeah, it's like, sometimes I don't want to be happy, don't hold it against me. And I think it actually has, a sliver of truth. Like, for whatever reason,
sometimes we just don't want to be happy.
We don't want to be happy. Like, we look out this, like, window of our cars and it's raining, and then we think we're, like, in this music video of just sadness.
So sad.
And we're not.
Me. No.
Right? Like, why wouldn't you want to be happy? And so the next time you are miserable, first of all, don't make other people miserable. And the next time somebody else is miserable trying to bring you into that crux,
don't fall into the trap.
Don't fall into the trap.
A way that you can do this is actually, it's what Jesus tells us to do, but it's really hard. I think this is one of the hardest things. And it's love thy neighbor as thyself. And Peel says, try to love everybody involved and pray for them, hard as it may be. Loving doesn't mean sentimentality, but rather a rational esteem for them as persons. And I also think that's what Christ meant. I don't think we have to, like, sentimentally love the people who are...
Of course not. You don't have to go up and, like, give them hugs and, like, treat them like they're your spouse.
But you can esteem that, give them the respect that, you are a human being and you probably are trying your best, and I can love you for that.
And you are a child of God, and, like,
I can love
you for that.
And I think that makes it easier.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. Like, what I always remember is my mom making reference to this. She's like, Jesus Christ said to love everybody. That doesn't mean I have to like everybody. Mm-hmm. And I think that's actually a good phrase in some regards. It's like, you can love everybody. That doesn't mean they have to be your best friend and that you have to do everything with them or all of a sudden allow them into your life and have this gorgeous relationship. That's not what this means, right? But you can love them and respect them as a human being, as a child of God.
It actually is helpful. It
It's
works
really
for
helpful. It's to put it into a better perspective.
me. And lastly, one of the best ways that we can handle ourselves in situations is to put the problem in God's hands. You can let go of it and you can let God take over. And he will then bring it out better than you think. And I have a personal example.
She does. And this is like a very, we've made reference to this before, but I think this experience taught Meg and even myself more about the principle of let go and let God than any other principle.
And just like his true power.
Right.
Okay, so my whole life I've been super healthy. You know, like that's one of like that's one of the ways God's blessed me. I've never really struggled with health problems. My twins came and I had a really great pregnancy until about the end, and my health went out the window. And so I got really sick with preeclampsia, and it was actually funny. So we were in Arizona this weekend, and my brother was gone at the time on his mission when I gave birth to my twins.
And her brother is literally her best friend.
We're best
throughout
friends,
life,
okay?
they're best friends.
Anyways, he saw this picture of me the night before I was about to give birth to my twins, and he was like, "Oh my goodness, you look so bad." And it might sound like it's offensive, but it's not. He's like, "You look so fat." No, what did he say? He was like,
"You look like you've never been healthy a day in your life."
And okay, it sounds bad, but coming from him, it was hilarious because we are so close, and I really have been healthy my whole life. And it wasn't that I was fat. This is just what a younger brother would say. It was that I was so swollen with so much preeclamptic swelling and water weight that I just looked like this blueberry. Anyways, that's besides the point. So anyways, I was really sick, and labor and delivery went nowhere near what we expected.
Yeah.
I was really, really sick. I was pumped up on tons of medications, and I ended up getting an emergency C-section. And it was actually very traumatic for me and Elijah watching.
Oh, yeah. It was insane.
Because I really, I really was this healthy individual, and then all of a sudden, it just seemed like my health was just completely gone, and it was really scary, actually. Mm-hmm. And so I had my emergency C-section. I was pumped up on all of this medication, and then they sent me home. And I was kind of like broken. I could barely walk. I was in a lot of pain, and it was so traumatic for me that we got home, and anytime I was laying on my back, I would just start to like shake because it reminded me of being on the operating table, and I was just on my back and just so out of control, and like that being on my back kind of freaked me out. And some of the decisions that got made in that situation by the doctors and by the medical staff, Elijah and I just didn't really agree with, but it was 3 a.m. and in the heat of the moment,
we did the best to birth, to anything.
We did the best we could. We handled it the best we could. But anyways, we kind of had this anger and resentment, and I had this like fear and trauma, and it was so dark.
Yeah, it was horrible.
And it was we were really shaken up.
Yeah.
And we looked at each other and we were like, we gotta get rid of this. This is really unhealthy. Okay. And it really was gripping us.
Yeah.
Like we were just so like.
It was just black.
It was just black and dark.
Like ominous. Yes. Hanging over you.
And it was a big problem, and what we ultimately decided to do is we decided to pray, and we decided to give this problem to our maker, and we said, look, like this was really hard and we can't carry this ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so we asked that he would take it from us and that he would help us to, just make the situation okay and take all of that out from, our hearts. And it was amazing how instantly this darkness and this fear and this anxiety and resentment and anger, it was gone in a second, and it's never come back.
No.
And now we can share this story, and now we look back at that experience, and this is one of our favorite things that Jordan Peterson ever said. We're thankful it happened. Never, never would I want to do it again. But I'm so thankful that I am stronger because of it. And God took all of the darkness and he replaced it with this strength. And I'm better for it.
Right.
And that didn't come from me.
No.
It couldn't have.
No, it comes directly from him.
Yes.
And I think that's what's incredible, because I even remember in like great detail that experience. And it, just like Meg said, there was just this black, ominous cloud hanging over us that would not leave. And I remember we both prayed and we were just crying and just like so traumatized by the experience. And then as soon as we said the prayer and just said, God, like, we can't handle this.
Please take it.
He took it. And like Meg said, it was instantaneous. He took it all.
And even now, I look back, I can't remember the worst parts of the surgery, the sickness. I have vague memories, but it's literally like gone from my recollection. Like I couldn't tell you what really happened.
Yeah. And now, I mean, what's incredible about that experience too is that we have these two perfectly healthy baby girls. And that's the result of this traumatic experience. And I think that's what's incredible, is if you do give it to God, there is a reason for your suffering. There is a reason for this misery. And he brings out something that is more joyful, more incredible, more loving than you could ever imagine. And those two little girls, like, I mean, I can't speak for Meg, but it's like...
We'd do it again.
Yeah. I'd do it again in
100%.
a heartbeat. You know, I'd go through all of that again if it meant that we had Bea and Winnie.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's pretty amazing. Now, to go into the next principle...
I love this one
This one's
so much.
good.
I think he nailed this one.
I think he nailed it. It's comical, but it's also just...
It's so good.
Just so good. And it's this. It says, like yourself. At least most of the time. And I think that's so profound. Because we should really get to know who we are. We should know our likes, our dislikes. We should figure out who we are as individuals. But what does he say when it comes to striving to be better?
He says that you should keep inspirational dissatisfaction as a goal to self-motivation. He goes, complete self-liking dulls the drive factor.
Right. So if you become egotistical, that means that you are no longer willing to improve. Because you think that you are all that is God, all that is man.
Right.
Like, you think that you are God's greatest creation. That's wrong.
Right. But on the other hand, you need to learn to know yourself, and you need to cultivate a self that you can trust and believe in. Yeah. You should like yourself
100%.
Most of the time.
Yes. I mean, I think back to even just experiences that I've had in my own life, and I do like myself, but I also dislike myself, and I think you have to have a healthy balance.
Yes.
I think you have to like yourself in the sense that, you know, you are a very disciplined person, that you are kind, that you are honest, that you are respectful. You can like
that you're trying.
All of those things. But then you need to dislike yourself enough to be like, I can be a little more honest. I can be a little more disciplined. I can be a little better. Mm-hmm. Because if you have that healthy relationship and balance the scales between liking and disliking yourself, you are constantly able to improve.
Right.
If one is balanced more than the other, you become either severely depressed and don't do anything, or you become severely joyful and don't do anything. So they're both evil.
So you gotta like yourself most of the time.
Most of the time.
The best way that you can find this balance is to practice humility.
Yeah.
And this is one of my favorite takeaways I took from the book. And it's his perspective of humility. And he says, it's not the small fry little guy who has the most humility. It is normally the big in mind. He goes, normally the small fry doesn't even know what humility is most of the time. So by being humble, you should be big in mind and soul. Be kindly, and you will like yourself that way, and so will other people. And I like that because a lot of times people will think, oh, the people who don't have a lot of material resources, or they're poor, or, you know, oh, they're the most humble.
Right.
And they, you know, their
farther from the truth.
situation makes them humble. But then he goes, no, they don't even know
what
what humility is. It's the people who choose to be big in mind that can adopt this principle and practice it into their life.
It's pretty cool. So if you just watched the recent Olympics, there was an individual, his name's Grant Fisher. He took bronze in the 5K and in the 10K for the United States of America. So I raced against him in high school a lot. And he was the big dog. He was the top dog. He won everything. I think he only lost one race in high school, if I remember right. Yeah, against other high school athletes, because he also raced against pros in high school because he was that good.
Sheesh.
Here's what was amazing about Grant Fisher. He was incredibly humble. And he was the big dog.
That's cool.
But here's what's interesting too, is that then I would race kids in the state of Idaho who the state of Idaho hasn't produced any grand runners. I'm going to be honest. Maybe a couple. But the small guys, they didn't know what humility was because they never had to be humble because they were already humbled. Right? Their situation didn't make them humble. They were just not good.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so what was interesting is that when I did go to nationals in these experiences, that I saw these individuals that were phenomenal individuals that had every reason to gloat of themselves. That's when true humility was. I love the story of Muhammad Ali. He was on an airplane, and a stewardess came by, and she says, "Oh, sir, could you please fasten your seatbelt?" And he goes, "Superman don't need no seatbelt." And the stewardess, quick-witted, just goes, "Superman don't need no plane either. Fasten your seatbelt." And I think that's what's so incredible is you have people like Muhammad Ali, right, who was the greatest of all time. At least that's what he said. And he knew it, but he did have experiences to be humbled. And that's what truly makes you a great individual. And it's like yourself most of the time, but be humble. And recognize that your maker is the one that you should give glory to and is the one that should be praised.
And is the one who offers you daily breath.
Exactly.
Every breath you take is because of his
It's a blessing
grace.
because of his grace.
Yes.
Yeah.
Next, how to have prosperity and enjoy life. And this section is going to be all about what Norman Vincent Peale calls learning to live with God's law of supply.
Yeah.
So I love this, and we have so many great examples from our personal life. To live in the law of supply, it's like this understanding that prosperity is not always or even usually to be conceived in terms of money, but as a constant flow of God's blessings. And just recently in life, we have been around lots of people, and the number one thing that everybody is talking about right now is that they don't have enough money.
Yeah.
We hear it in everybody we associate with right now. This is like the number one complaint
From
and
teenagers
hot topic.
to people in their 40s.
It's like, oh, I don't have enough money. Things are so expensive. I don't have this or that.
I don't have this. I don't have this. I don't have this. I live paycheck to paycheck. Camping's too expensive. Everybody is talking about how much money they don't have. And
in doing so, they're only opening this channel into their lives to have less and less money. Yeah. So if you think and talk in lack, you are going to be decreeing lack into the universe. And if you're thinking lack thoughts, you're going to create a lack situation. Yep. On the other hand, if you stress the thought of plenty, thoughts of plenty will help create plenty. Yeah. So express prosperity and blessings always. And the way that I see living in God's supply, it's this idea that do your honest best, think right, live right, and the Lord is going to provide. Mm-hmm. And also but be able to look outside of the realm of money and think about your health, think about your relationship, think about really all the blessings that He is pouring into your life daily. Mm-hmm. And I think that's how you can increase in all of those things.
I 100% agree. It was actually interesting. I was listening to a brief excerpt by Jordan Peterson, and he talks about how men doesn't live by bread alone. And he makes reference to a patient that he had who was a heroin addict. And he's like, the worst thing in the world was for this man to have money. He's like, because if he had money, he was in the trenches. He's like, but if he didn't, he was clean cut. He was like rearing and ready to go. And it's because men doesn't live by bread alone. And so whenever me and Meg even get to the point where we're like, oh man, like I wish we had a little more money. I wish this, blah, blah, blah.
I'm
blah,
like,
blah.
no, we
Yeah.
have so much.
We both kind of have to take a step back and be like, look, we are incredibly blessed. We have our health. We have our family. We have each other. We have our faith. And at the end of the day, if that's all I have, I think we're doing okay.
Yes. So we just got back from this trip from Arizona, and my parents have a beautiful home.
Beautiful home.
They have a
beautiful pool.
They have worked hard. They've worked so hard to live a comfortable lifestyle.
Yeah, to get to where they're at.
Yes, and it's amazing, and I take nothing away from it. I think it's so great. And sometimes after being in this beautiful home for a couple days, we'll come back to our apartment.
It's like, what the?
Like, where do we live? You know, we don't have all of these things. But it was yesterday that we came home, and what was so cool is B and Winnie love their grandma and grandpa's house. But
I think
after
they're
a
the
full
examples
day,
to us.
after a full day of traveling, we bring them back to our house. You know, our house with 2 chairs, a bookshelf. You know,
Right.
meager possessions in terms of money or whatever. Anyways, and they are stoked out of their minds to be home. They are just bright-eyed, and they're looking around this
Rolling
apartment
around,
as if it is
around.
the tip of the top-notch palace.
Yeah.
They are so happy to be back home. And Elijah and I were too. And instead of coming home and adopting this, oh, we're home.
Woe is me.
Woe
we
is
have
me.
No...
Instead, we're like,
pretty
oh my
things.
goodness. We are so happy to be
Man,
back.
it's so
And
good to be
look at
home.
our bed. Look at our table. Look at our house. We're
Yeah.
so thankful to be here. And it was awesome.
It was. And I think that's the whole premise that Mr. Peel is talking about, is that you need to look at your life and count all your blessings that you've ever had and that you do currently have. You know, in fact, I know every single person on this earth has something to be grateful for. You know, even if it's just breath in your lungs, you have a reason to be grateful. And so I think our little girls are prime examples of this, because like Meg said, they came home and they were stoked out of their mind.
They were so
Grandma and
happy.
Grandpa's house is great, and we love them.
Oh,
and
they
we
loved
love
it there.
their aunts and uncles, but they love being in their ghetto little apartment.
They love it.
Yeah, they love it, and so do we, right? And I think that's really the takeaway. Is just look at what you do have and be grateful for it.
And by talking in terms of prosperity and gratitude, you will receive more.
100%. I think there's a phrase that it says, "You will never be happier than you are grateful." And what's so cool is Meg's even put this in perspective for me, is that I will be just as happy here in this apartment at this podcast studio as I will be in $1 million house with $1 million podcast studio, because this is what we love to do. You know, and so sometimes people get this misunderstanding that it's like, oh, when I buy this house, I'll be happy. When I get this job, I'll be happy. When I buy this car, I'll be happy. And it's wrong. Mm-hmm. Happiness is a choice every single day. And I think that's what's so cool, is that you have to adopt that prosperity mindset and view the things that you do have as such a blessing. And I promise you, like, you'll see more prosperity just by changing your perspective.
Mm-hmm. Okay, the next principle is how to tackle problems hopefully and creatively. And I'm really excited to share this Norman Vincent Peale's definition of what a positive thinker is.
Yeah,
An optimist. Because Elijah and I have been, people always make fun of us as optimists, and they believe that we just live in the clouds, that we don't have a good grip on life. But I just love,
couldn't be farther from the truth.
And I love this definition that he says. So he explains that optimism is positive thinking lighted up. Some chronic objectors to anything that smacks of hopelessness have decried positive thinking as an overly bright view of life and a kind of jaunty disregard of pain and trouble in this world. Some people have distorted my emphasis, often deliberately, I have felt. Others simply have misunderstood. But the positive thinker is a hard-headed, tough-minded, and factual realist. He sees all the difficulties, and I mean all of them. And what's more, he sees them clearly, which is more than can be said for the average negative thinker. And I like that because it's like not even the negative person is seeing things clearly.
No.
They're just as they're the ones who are distorted. Anyways, the latter invariably sees everything in shadowy discoloration, but the positive thinker, unlike the negativist, does not allow difficulties and problems to depress him, and certainly not to defeat him. He looks expectantly beyond all acknowledged difficulties for creative solutions. In other words, he sees more than difficulties. He tries to see the solutions of those difficulties. The positive thinker has a longer and more penetrative insight. He is completely objective, he has definitive goals, and he never takes no for an answer. He is, in short, indomitable, not the kind that will take a licking. He just keeps on fighting and thinking and praying and working and believing, and you'd be surprised how many times the positive thinker comes out of the toughest and seemingly most hopeless situations with positive results. And even if he doesn't, he has the satisfaction of knowing that he gave it a good try, which is something, a mighty satisfying something. And maybe, just maybe, the positive thinker who didn't win his objective won something even more precious, his own manhood, his own soul. I'm like, I don't know what else to say.
Seriously. Like, I think what Meg said right at the beginning is that some people view us as dreamers, but it's like, no, we have a very real understanding of the reality of our life. I mean, a prime example is when we were having twins. We knew it was going to be very difficult. We knew it was going to be hard. One baby is hard enough. Two babies is twice as hard.
Yes.
Actually, it's like 4 times as hard.
It's pretty hard.
Anybody with multiples knows that. But here's what's interesting is everybody feels the need to tell us like, oh man, you're going to have a hard time. Double trouble. Like, it's so bad. I don't know why I went Southern right there. But that's my point is that we had a very real understanding that our baby girls were going to be a lot. But we also had a very real understanding that we could view it as really difficult or we could view it as really beautiful. As a process for us to learn, as a process for us to get better, and as a process for them to do the same.
Yes.
And I think that's what's been so cool about having twins is that we do change our understanding. And thank heavens for BabyWise because they gave us that understanding of the endless party. That's how we started our podcast, was because of our twins. And the chapter in the book on multiples was titled The Endless Party. And so instead of looking at this horrible situation, we viewed it as an opportunity for us to take advantage of the situation we've been given, start a podcast, and just talk about our life experiences and how the principles that we've learned from these books and our own day-to-day experiences with the girls and our life and our marriage and help others in the process. And I think that's what's so cool is like...
That's an optimist.
That's an optimist.
The babies are still hard.
Yes.
We still have hard days.
Yes.
It still takes a lot of emotional and physical effort to care for them.
Yeah.
And we know that.
We just traveled from Arizona yesterday, and it was a lot.
It was a lot.
Like, it was a lot. It's a lot every time. And we're not blind to that. And I think so many people out there listening to this podcast are not blind to the realities that life is hard. They're not. Right. But they choose to view it as this opportunity to grow, to fight,
and to
feel,
believe.
to pray, to be a little better than you were yesterday. And that's what an optimist is. It's not this dreamer in the clouds that thinking everything's okay. It's this hard-headed, hard-working individual that knows everything's going to be okay because they can hack life.
Yes.
And I think that's what's incredible.
I think it's so beautiful.
Yeah. So we're going to just jump into the last little bit of this because I think our babies are starting to stir.
Yes. So we'll close around here.
So we'll start to close around here. And we've already made reference to this, but it's how to be successful and happy in life. And there's a couple things that really have hit on the head with us. And it's not just in this book. It's even from other things that we've been studying. It's just this idea that you shouldn't have any guilt when it comes to being happy and successful.
You should just own it.
You should be happy. You should be successful. And I think it's actually interesting because Meg, she had a friend her freshman year of college. I shouldn't even say she was a friend because she thought Meg was like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Was like,
fake.
Yes, like ditzy.
They thought Meg was fake because she was so genuinely happy with her life. And then they came to understand, 6 months into college.
This is just how I am,
This
man.
is just how she was. And then they were blown away, and all of them all of a sudden started to be happier because of her. And I think that's what's so incredible is like, that's what you should be. You shouldn't have any guilt being successful or happy.
And you can be unashamedly happy, especially when you're like operating your life honestly and doing the right things. How could you like be happy? You
Right.
should be.
If you're genuinely working as hard as you possibly can, doing all that you can to be an honest, upstanding person, why would you ever feel guilt for living the right way that you should? And if anybody makes you or tries to make you feel guilt, push them to the side. That's
Stay
garbage.
away.
Stay away from that.
Get away from that noise.
That's nonsense.
Yes. The next thing you can do is adopt the modern idea of success, and that is just to be a successful person. That's what success is.
Yeah, that's what true success is.
Get rid of the idea that it's a number
Well,
or it's an object.
it just goes back to that idea that men doesn't live by bread alone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you really don't. Like, it isn't just money that makes somebody successful. Like, there are so many people in my own life that I know that have a lot of money that I don't view as successful individuals. Yes, they are successful in financial areas, but when it comes to the relationships in their lives, when it comes to their families, when it comes to their own character and their own integrity, they're not successes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you should aim to be a success in all areas of life, especially when it comes to your own personal integrity and character.
Right. The next thing is don't write off the importance of hard work, the guts to keep at it, a definite goal, and the ability to have fun in the process. If there's no fun in it, you're doing something wrong with all you're doing. We love
Seriously,
to podcast.
we love
fun.
all of this
We
experience.
love our life. It's super fun.
Yes.
That's why it's called the Endless Party, because we hope that we can continue to make life a party.
Yes.
Even though we're working so hard every day and we get into bed dead tired. So
I'll tell you
trashed.
what, we went to bed last night. None of us, all four of us, just didn't even
Passed
stir.
out.
And like, our babies have been waking up at 7 a.m. on the dot for like weeks now. They didn't even wake up until like 7:30.
7:30.
I woke up at like 7:15.
He had to check that all was well.
I was like, what is happening?
Everyone's
now?
actually
Everybody's dead. That's how dog tired we go to bed at the end of the evening, and I wouldn't change it for anything
Yes.
because we're having fun in the process.
Make sure to use your head, he says. Without that, you'll never get ahead.
Yep.
Stay
Which I like.
enthusiastic. Stay relaxed. Have quiet times regularly and practice the feeling of God recreating you.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that the kingdom of God is within you. And eliminate your capacity for self-destructiveness. Stop destroying yourself, okay?
Yeah. Stop
Like
going in
yourself.
spirals. Like yourself at least most of the time.
Okay? Build yourself up. Do the right things.
There's this poem that I'm going to read for you. It's by Edgar Albert Guest, and it's called Myself. It says, I have to live with myself, and so I want to be fit for myself to know. I want to be able as days go by, always to look myself straight in the eye. I don't want to stand with the setting sun and hate myself for the things I've done. I don't want to keep on a closet shelf a lot of secrets about myself and fool myself as I come and go into thinking no one else will know the kind of person I really am. I don't want to dress up myself in sham. I want to go out with my head erect. I want to deserve all men's respect. But here in the struggle for fame and wealth, I want to be able to like myself. I don't want to look at myself and know I'm a bluster and bluff and empty show. I never can hide myself from me. I see what others may never see. I know what others may never know. I never can fool myself, and so, whatever happens, I want to be self-respecting and conscience-free. And I actually really like this poem because I think he hits it right on the head about being an optimist, about liking yourself, but not too much, about working, about striving for fame and wealth, but also recognizing to be humble and to be the type of person that God wants you to be, to live up to your potential.
I think that was a perfect way to close this podcast. So thank you, everybody, for listening in today.
Yeah, thank you for listening in. Make sure to subscribe.
Comment.
Comment.
We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely.
Seriously, it makes our day when we get to hear great things from you guys. So
Yeah. So until next time, everybody.
Peace.